Now, World Students' Day is observed on October 15th every year. This day is set aside to honor former Indian President Dr. Abdul Kalam's many contributions, especially in the fields of academia and research. This year's theme is If You Fail, Never Give Up, because fail means first attempt in learning. Meanwhile, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, is calling for foundational learning skills to stop learning crisis and improve learning outcomes in primary schools in Nigeria. UNICEF's education specialist, Mrs. Yetunde Oluwatosin, who spoke at a media workshop on foundational literacy and numeracy, said limited infrastructure, that of teachers, limited learning data, especially on proficiency level, are amongst causes of the problem. Now, joining me to discuss more on the significance of this day is Oriyomi Ogunwale, co-founder Eduplana. Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening.
Good
Thanks
evening.
for having me.
All right, great. Now let's look at this year's theme. If you fail, never give up. In what ways do you think the government can encourage these students not to fail, but more importantly, when they do so, not to give up?
Mm. I think it's a very good theme for the year. If you fail, never give up. But the best way you can motivate children is to ensure that learning is fun for them. And what students see today, for example, are not fun to them yet. And one of those things that we continue to look at is the government ensuring that, yes, they put their mouth where their word is, which is to say, for the new government, for example, to actually um, invest massively in education and prioritize education as an urgent priority for the government, for the nation. So if we see enough priority from government officials, who then translate that into education policy, the education sector action plan, and most importantly, they fund the implementation. Now, to put at the back of their mind that this is their target to improve numeracy skills, foundational skills, reading skills. These are very, very important skills for children. And by age 7, if a child cannot read or write, he or she is now behind by 50% more than a child that can read. So it's a very, very important thing that the government needs to now look into. But it's enough time for us to stop doing rhetorics and start putting the money where our mouth is and ensure that there is an active action plan that addresses the issues. It is well funded, and then we can begin to see these changes over
I
time.
mean, oh, great. Now let's look at UNICEF. UNICEF is actually advocating the deployment of digital skills to eradicate learning, poverty, particularly in countries across Africa. Now, what is your take on this particular move?
Yeah, I think at this stage in 2023, it's the very right move. It's the best move, and you have to look at the backdrop of COVID-19 when there was lockdown. There was some form of digital education through radio, through TV, but the adoption was very poor. But what is more sad is after COVID-19 went away, we went back to status quo, and that is not still being funded today. So for me, this is the right call from UNICEF. What we can then look forward to is to look at how serious will this government take this, because digital education is cheaper, right? If you can educate more kids even through radio, even through TV, state radio, have a schedule. So these are things that government can do. But like we've always had issues in this country, it's about ensuring that these things are well implemented, and then we can achieve the final goal of reducing learning poverty in Nigeria.
Now, I don't want us to, of course, restrict, the whole conversation to what exactly the government alone can do, because I also believe that private individuals, can also play a very significant role. Now, most students including myself, have failed severally. I remember back then in school, I had to write O levels a couple of times before I eventually had to pass, with distinction. Now, many of the reasons could be as a result of finance or lack of adequate motivation. Right? Now, aside the regular subsidized school fees by government schools and also the contributions, in terms of scholarships by private individuals, what may not, what other things can be done to help this particular crop of students?
Um, the way we can look at it is to look at it very holistically, right? And one of those things I like to say is the fact that if the government wants public-private partnership, for example, in education, government must take the lead and it must show what areas, right, they want the private sector to come in. And then this must be attached to a bigger role because private sector, you've seen the likes of maybe I don't want to start promoting brands, maybe MTN, building schools. Some will donate bags, some will say they are doing scholarship for 200 students. These are piecemeal from different places. What we need is a government-led strategy to say this is how we want to come in, this is how private sector can come in, and these are the benefits for private sector. Do you understand? And then when we have a structure like that, take for example the digital education, we could have said a subsidized internet rate for students who want to access digital learning on their phones, maybe on their parents' phone. And then there is some sort of benefit. Those are ways in which private sector can come in, but the government must take the lead. There's no how we can say government should neglect his or her responsibility because don't forget that government makes the final decision. So no matter what the private sector might have done, they still have the final say. So we just need to like have a strategy. Is it that you build, these are the number of schools that are dilapidated in a local government, these are the number that we aim to renovate next year. This is the number that we are hoping that private sector can come in and address. And then they throw it out. Interested private sector organizations can come in and then pick it up. And then there is some sort of benefit also for private sector. That looks structured. And over time, there is a goal, there's a vision of what you are trying to achieve, and you can measure it. So these are the issues. No matter what we want to do, presently, the approach is private sector working here and there, doing different things. But how do you measure impact?
Mm.
So those are the issues. The government must still take the first lead to ensure that private sector works very well.
All right. Oriyomi Ogunwale, thank you so much for your time.